So today what we're going to be talking about is a little bit about entrepreneurship in general, but in particular, I want to be talking about a few of the valuable tools that can help you undertake an entrepreneurship project if you're interested in. And for entrepreneurship, you don't necessarily have to start a new company. That's one type of entrepreneurship. But there's also different types of entrepreneurship, like intrapreneurship, also referred to as corporate entrepreneurship, where you do entrepreneurial activities within an established company, including large businesses or even the government or at a state university like ours. So there are many ways that you can benefit from doing entrepreneurial activities. So my name is Adil Oran, as Gökberk Hoca was mentioning. If you want to find any other information about myself, you can drop by my website, adiloran.com, or check out what we're doing on Twitter, because that's probably the first place you will hear about it. And with that, let's go on. Okay, so first of all, I define entrepreneurship slightly different than the traditional definition. In the traditional definition, some people might say anybody who starts a new business is an entrepreneur. Yes, I agree. That could be a definition that you use. However, I'm more interested in a certain type of entrepreneurship, being at a university and being involved with especially tech entrepreneurship. I'm interested in high growth potential entrepreneurship that can make a big difference in terms of revenue, in terms of sales, and potentially also jobs. So the definition I use comes from Eric Ries, author of the Lean Startup, and he defines a startup, and from that I extract the entrepreneur definition, where he says an entrepreneur is somebody trying to develop a new product or service. That part makes sense, right? Doing something new, but doing this under conditions of high uncertainty. What does it mean, high uncertainty? Well, in some cases, it's when you're not sure who your client is, who your customer is. You're not sure what they're trying to accomplish. You're not sure what type of problems there are. You're not sure how many customers might be out there. You're not sure how their problems can be solved. You're not sure how long it's going to take to produce the product to solve their problem, how much it's going to cost, where should I sell this, what price should I charge, where should I sell? So all sorts of questions that either you don't know the answer to or you're not certain about the answer. Those are conditions of high uncertainty. It may be a little more difficult to do entrepreneurship under these conditions, but if successful, it has the potential to create great value. So that's why I'm interested in this. And one thing that we need to remember, though, is that not all entrepreneurs succeed. Okay, not every single idea becomes an immediate success. And I go over this because sometimes there are some pretty scary numbers out there. Okay, what type of numbers am I talking about? Well, if we were face to face, or even if a few of your cameras were open. By the way, let me say one thing. Thank you, Gökberk Hoca, for at least having your camera open, because over Zoom, it can be quite difficult to give a lesson when you're kind of talking to yourself or talking to the computer, where you don't know if there's anybody actually listening, whether they're understanding, whether there are question marks. So that's one of the advantages of being in class. But this one being over Zoom, not that big of a problem. I'm pretty used to making this presentation, but if you have a camera and would like to open your screen, that would be nice. Okay, let me continue. If you go online and if you do a little search for what percentage of companies survive, you may run into some pretty scary numbers. The most common one is probably something like 90% of new companies fail within 1 year or 18 months. First time I heard that, I said, wow, this is scary. Do I really want to be teaching entrepreneurship? If of the people I convinced to try entrepreneurship, if 90, 95% of them fail, in 1 or 2 years. And especially in Turkey, when you fail, it's not like failing in the United States, where you simply give them the key and say, okay, goodbye. In Turkey, if you fail, if you go bankrupt, it's pretty long and will follow you around for quite some time. The money that you owe, especially if you owe anything to the government, and also there's this big stigma which kind of gets attached to you. So if the real failure rate truly was that high, I might reconsider teaching entrepreneurship. Well, the good news is that the real percentages aren't that bad. And first, let me give you the numbers for the US, new companies that were established in the United States. And here you might see, let me make it into a pointer. Here we see the survival rate of companies over time. And the different colors are basically companies that were established in 95, 2000, 2005, and 2010. And the nice thing about them is that they seem to be one on top of the other, which means that they're pretty consistent. Or in statistics speak, we would say that these results are robust. Under different assumptions, under different economic conditions, the results seem to be quite consistent, okay? So even when the economy is doing well or it's doing poorly, the results don't seem to change much, at least for the US. And here what we can see is that 1 year, about 20% of businesses shut down. If you go out to 3 years, about 1/3 of them, a little over 1/3 has shut down. About 65% survive. If you go to 5 years, it looks like it's about half and half. And if you go 10 years, about 2/3 have shut down, 1/3 continue to operate, continue to survive. So the survival rate, or failure rate, 90% in 1 year, does not seem to be accurate according to these numbers. The real number probably came from somewhere else under certain conditions and this and that, and then it's generally thought to be applicable to everything. It's not, okay? So here we can clearly see that survival is significantly higher than just 10% in 2 years. And, out 10 years, about 35% survive, at least 10 years, some significantly beyond that. So that's the good news. How about Turkey, you might ask? Okay, in a lot of books, we give numbers from developed economies or from the US, and we say, well, we don't know for Turkey. Well, fortunately, in this case, we do know a little bit. Even though it's not that easy to find, I'm doing some research on this and with some PhD and master students, and we were able to obtain the numbers for Turkey using the official numbers from Ticari Sicil Gazetesi. And from there, we were able to extract these numbers. We're still working on the exact numbers, but approximately here, this is the survival rates, 100%, 90%, 80%, and so on. And this line is 5 years out. This line is 10 years out. And again, we have companies established then 95, 2000, 05. And the structure that we seem to see here is pre-2000, they seem to be, about the same, but post-2000, it's a little lower. So survival has become a little more difficult after. About 90% of companies were surviving at least 5 years, whereas post-2000, that's kind of like 85, let's say at least 80%. If you go out 10 years, in 10 years, pre-2000, it looked like about 80% survival. And after 2000, it seems to be around 65%, so maybe 2/3. So our survival rate actually is higher than the US, which was unexpected for many people. I've conducted a number of surveys on people over Twitter and other places, and they had pretty consistently said, oh, survival is much lower in Turkey. It's much more difficult, economic uncertainty, political uncertainty. The numbers don't seem to indicate that. By the way, does survival mean success? Not always. Some of these companies might actually be barely surviving, or maybe it would be better if they had been shut down. So take that as you're thinking about it. And another reason why these might be slightly high is that if you've ever tried to close down a company in Turkey, you will find out it's very difficult and long and bureaucratic. It used to take more than 2 years. Now they say it's down to 3 months, 6 months, something like that, but still not easy. And some people prefer to, even if officially they haven't shut it down, they're not continuing with the business and stuff like this. And second, survival as high as this might not be good because it might be keeping companies that are not efficient alive. So if you're interested in innovation, for example, an economist, Schumpeter, says that creative destruction is what creates a lot of the innovation. And here, this probably is preventing the resources from becoming available to the more innovative, to the more efficient. So it's not necessarily a very good thing to have survival as high as this. But the summary is that there is a significant amount of failure. It is fairly large numbers. It's not as high as the urban legends or the internet legends, whatever you want to call it, but still it's high enough so that you want to be careful. So before starting out, what can I do to reduce possibility of failure? So that's what we say on this slide. How can we reduce it? Well, what I'm going to be talking about today and the tools I will be suggesting are some of the ways that you may be able to reduce probability of failure. So this is another website which, if you're interested in innovation entrepreneurship, you might want to check out. It's called CB Insights. They also maintain a list of the unicorns in the world. A unicorn is a closely held, privately held company which has exceeded the valuation of $1 billion. I'm sorry. So there's currently more than 1,000 companies out there. That number used to be significantly lower, but it's gone up. I don't know, is it a bubble or is it that inflation for whatever reason? But these are companies that are not yet on an organized exchange like New York Stock Exchange or Borsa Istanbul, but whose valuations have risen above $1 billion. So they have a list of those. This particular one is a study where they looked at companies which had received investments and then went bankrupt, they shut down, and they made announcements about why they shut down. So they call it a post-mortem. A post-mortem would be an examination that you do on cadavers, on people that have died, to understand the reason for their dying. So this is one done on companies which have gone bankrupt. And they found a number of reasons, and you can read this, download it from their website. But to me, the most important one is the one at the very top up here. No market need, okay? And that's what we don't want to happen to you. If you're going to try entrepreneurship and you're going to spend your time, your energy, your money, your friends, your family's money, and so on, and then you finally come out with a product, a software or a physical product, and then you try to sell it to customers and they say, we don't want it. That's definitely something you don't want to happen, okay? So how can we prevent it is what we need to think about. And basically, this is a guy called Paul Graham, which is going to help me make sure that you remember the importance of this. How so? Paul Graham is the founder of Y Combinator. In 2003, he established the first acceleration program in the world, okay? And acceleration program is basically kind of like an incubation program, but the incubators take it from the idea stage to beginning a business, whereas accelerators take businesses which have been established and typically have a product, but they take you in, they shine you up, they give you a little money, they teach you about your business model, they give you mentoring classes for about 2-3 months, And then they have a demo day where you go present to other investors and potential customers. And hopefully with this help, with this shove, your growth accelerates a lot. And they make money by sharing, by selling the shares that they got from their investment in your company. Typically, they invest about $100,000, and typically they get between 5 and 10% of the company for the chance to go through such a system. And again, Y Combinator is the oldest of these and also one of the most successful to this day. So what he says about succeeding in entrepreneurship is, he says it's pretty simple. If you want to succeed, make sure that, boom, you are building, you are making something people want. And by people here, he doesn't mean just any old person. He says customers. So make sure that you're making something that customers want, that they need, that they're willing to pay for. If you do that, then the probability of success goes up significantly. So as a complement to this, so, statement of the obvious, it should be, do not spend money, time, energy building something people do not want, okay? Sometimes as academicians, we forget about this, right? As academics, we're happy if we can do some research and then come up with some numbers which help us write an article which gets published. We don't always care whether the results are useful or can be used to make money, okay? If it's R&D, if it's something new, hey, we'll do it. But as an entrepreneur, that's not a very good approach. As an entrepreneur, you should make sure that what you're trying to develop has customers out there, unless it's very early stages of research. If you're doing fundamental research, okay, that's another deal. That's what the government funding is for. But for most research, you want to make sure that what you're developing has a customer out there. Don't do something just because you can. Make sure that you're doing it if there's a customer out there. So this, especially in this class, might be important for you, because some of you are doing this project just to graduate, okay? Because your professor said, okay, you couldn't find something, why not try this, okay? And you're going to do it, you're going to graduate, congratulations. If that's all you want, okay. But if potentially you want to take what you're doing, and I guess this is a 2-semester course, so something that you work on for 2 semesters, wouldn't it be great if it could also turn into an entrepreneurship project which can create a lot of value? Well, in that case, make sure that what you're trying to develop is something which the market, the customers need and are willing to pay for. And anytime I talk to entrepreneurs, when I ask them this question, many of them say, yeah, I think there's customers. I think they'll want this, okay? That's not enough, okay? I ask them, are you sure, okay, that there are customers for this? How do you know that there's customers for this? And do you have proof of this? Well, they might say, how can I have proof? I haven't finished the product yet. I haven't tried to sell it. When I try to sell it, then I will have proof about whether there are customers or whether there are not. Well, yes, that's one potential place to get evidence, get proof, but it's not the only way. And what I will be talking about is one of the ways that you can get proof about whether your idea has a chance of success or not much earlier than developing the final product, okay? And we're going to talk about the MVP in just a few slides. So, newborn baby, when you hear that, what comes to your mind? And I'm also cheating a little by putting these pictures out. But typically people think, say things like, oh, pure, or, beautiful, or, all sorts of nice things. But in reality, people that have had kids relatively recently might not say the same things. And furthermore, let me say that newborn babies don't look like this, okay? Newborn babies look like this, or especially if it was a natural birth, they look like this with the elongated head and so on, okay? So newborn babies are like this. But for some reason, when we say newborn baby, this is the image that comes to most people's minds. Why is this? Well, we need to see babies like this in order for mankind to survive, mankind to continue. Because if we really saw them as they truly were, we might have less babies. And in that case, we may have difficulty continuing the human species. Okay, so we need to see our babies like this, even if reality isn't exactly like this. So especially when you speak to parents, okay, I don't think we have a lot of parents yet in this class, okay, but if you go and ask parents what their babies were like when they were newborn, for example, I have two sons. For some reason, my two sons, yeah, they did look like this, okay, it must be the genes. Okay, but in reality, it's not always like that. But the parents don't notice. So why am I talking about babies in an entrepreneurship presentation? Because your ideas are like your babies, especially when they're floating in the air, when you haven't had to examine them very closely. They may actually be quite ugly, but as their parents, you don't notice this, okay? So what I'm going to do is, for real babies, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to tell the parents their babies are ugly, okay? But for ideas, for entrepreneurship ideas, I will tell entrepreneurs the weaknesses of their ideas. And even better, I will give entrepreneurs tools to help them notice the weaknesses of their business ideas, okay? And so we'll see at least two different tools that will help them try to capture their business ideas, put it down onto paper, because it is more difficult to lie to yourself when things are written down, when you see it in black and white, okay? So if we come back to entrepreneurs and their survival, one of the reasons why there's so much failure in entrepreneurship is due to the Nike entrepreneurs. Well, what would you like to remind us? Let me see, there's something in the chat. This metaphor is ugly, but we can tell parents to fix their babies. I wouldn't try that, Batuhan. Don't tell new parents that their babies are ugly. They'll get upset. So does anybody know where the name Nike comes from? How about this? This is in Paris at the Louvre Museum. And yes, Batuhan, she is actually a goddess, and the goddess of victory. This one is actually the Nike goddess of victory of Samothrace, I think, even though she's lost her head. This is from closer by. This is from Ephesus. And to prove that it's closer by, I had to go and take a picture of me and my son at this. And yes, it is the goddess of victory. And what she's holding is that laurel wreath that is used to give to the people that win in the Olympics, in the races before. So why do we use Nike and entrepreneur together in the same sentence? Well, because Nike has the shoe brand, the sports brand Nike has a nice logo and a nice catchphrase. Do you remember the catchphrase? Just do it, right? Just do it. Well, yeah, just do it sounds nice to go out and run and do this, but for entrepreneurs, I don't advise it, because the Nike entrepreneurs are those that have an idea about an entrepreneurship project and then zero research, zero preparation. They go out and try to just do it. Sometimes you read in the newspapers or on television stories about entrepreneurs that just did it. No preparation, no strategic work ahead of time, and became successful. Be careful in using those as guides. Why? Because for every one person that was successful as a Nike entrepreneur, no preparation, just doing it, there's probably 99 of them which failed and are sleeping under a bridge somewhere. Okay, so always keep in mind that there's a distribution curve, and most of the stories that you hear about come from one extreme or the other extreme of the distributions. So randomly, they might have been successful due to other reasons, but that may not be how they tell the story. So be careful about entrepreneurs that tell you about how they did everything randomly and still became a big success. Maybe they were just lucky. So rather than being a Nike entrepreneur, I suggest as an alternative that you use the scientific method to help you in your entrepreneurship journey. And in particular, we give this a name called the Lean Startup Methodology to help you use the scientific method of observation, hypothesis formulation, and testing in your entrepreneurship journey. So also, sometimes what I hear is an entrepreneur or a potential entrepreneur that comes to me asking for advice, but says, "Oh, I don't want to, tell you about my story, about my idea." Why? Well, maybe you'll steal it. Well, one, yeah, I teach entrepreneurship, but I'm not necessarily that much of a direct entrepreneur. But at the same time, if your idea is so simple that by explaining your idea for 5 minutes to somebody, if they can steal it, if they can copy it, then let them steal it as soon as possible before you spend too much time and energy on it. Because a good entrepreneurship idea is one that not only is valuable, but also has ways of protecting itself from competitors. Because otherwise, you're not going to be able to make it into a success unless you're able to capture the market and keep the market, the customers, for a certain amount of time. So as part of that entrepreneurship idea, there must also be ways that you have protection from your competitors in this market and why your idea can't be easily copied. And that thing isn't always a patent, okay? There needs to be some other things. But I'm not going to talk about that too much today. But if we think of ideas, yes, ideas are not all equal. And maybe an awful idea might be something like a -1, a weak idea +1, a so-so idea 5, good idea 10, great idea 15, brilliant idea 20. Oh, so makes a big difference, right? Well, actually, the thing that makes the biggest difference is the implementation, the execution of the ideas. And those are what we call multipliers. So, for example, if you never use that idea, if you never implement the idea, you're not going to be increasing the value of it. So an awful idea not executed, -1 times 1 is still only worth -1. A weak idea that you don't execute is still worth maybe $1, because you haven't used it, you haven't tried it. So-so idea that is not executed isn't worth very much, but if you implement it, if you try it with a weak execution, you might say multiply that by 1,000. With a so-so execution, 10,000. So so-so idea, so-so executed might become a business worth $50,000. Okay, probably not something to write home about, but you might be able to survive with that much. A good execution multiplied by 100,000. Okay, so now it starts becoming interesting. Great execution, brilliant execution, maybe up to a 10 million multiplier. Okay, so a so-so idea, very well executed, can become a successful business. But if you can get a great idea or a brilliant idea, yeah, those can become kind of the unicorns or if not unicorns, gazelles. Okay, so smaller versions of unicorns. But again, if you don't do it, if you only talk about it, you aren't really creating value. So if you're only talking about it, we might call you a wantrepreneur. Okay, somebody who talks and wants to become an entrepreneur but never does it. That's a failure. Okay, if you never try it out. But the thing, again, that really makes a difference is good implementation, hard work, a lot of sweat, and a good team doing good work is what can make a big difference. So the actual ideas themselves aren't worth a lot of money. Don't expect to make a lot of money just because you have this one idea. And so don't be afraid to share these ideas, because a lot of those ideas, many other people have the same idea as well, but they never go out and do it. And then you have a lot of people saying, when somebody becomes successful with an idea close to yours, you say, hey, I had that idea. You know, I should have made $100 million. I should have become a millionaire or a billionaire. I'm sorry, a lot of the ideas that come to me and they talk with me about it, I say, oh, do you know that this company and this company and this entrepreneur and this entrepreneur, I've probably heard that idea or a similar one, 5 or 10 times in the last year. So don't start thinking that you are so, great, wonderful, that you have ideas nobody else has. That happens very, very infrequently. Okay. Many of the ideas that have become successful businesses, they weren't the only ones to have those ideas. They just applied it better, implemented it, executed it better than their competition. Okay. So to make a business, yes, you need to multiply the idea value with the implementation, with the execution. And these are the ones that make a big difference. So I had said we're going to introduce some tools to help you capture those ideas and put it down onto paper. Even though it's not the subject of today's class, let me at least introduce business models. And in particular, this one is the most commonly used one, especially in entrepreneurship areas. It was developed by Alex Osterwalder, and it takes a business idea and in 9 parts, in 9 blocks, it forces you to think about different aspects of the idea and get it down onto paper, adding detail to it without skipping any potentially important parts of the idea. When you're just thinking about it and explaining to your friends, you might focus on 1 or 2 aspects of it, but you probably have not thought out all of these 9 areas. So this is something that, for one, forces you to write down what you're talking about. For example, who is your customer? How many customers are out there? What is the problem of that customer you're trying to solve? And how are you going to solve this? How much is it going to cost to make that product? What is the price you're going to be selling this at? And when you actually write it down, you say, oh, I think I can make it for only this much. I'm assuming I can sell it at this price to this many people. Oh, that's not possible. Sometimes when you see it on paper, you realize that your assumptions were bad assumptions. Okay. Telling you your baby's ugly. So in summary, a business model is a description, kind of a paragraph about how your company, 1, creates value. 2nd, how does it get this value to the customers? How does it deliver it to the customers? And 3, how does it capture some of this value that it's created for the company to be successful and make money? And some actually only focus on that part. When they say business models, some people only think about the revenue model or the revenue part of the business model. How do you make money from this idea? Okay. But in reality, it's a little more detailed than that. This is, again, the business model canvas. There are different versions of this, different business models. You don't have to use this one, even if it is the most popular one. But I strongly advise you to use at least one version of this. And again, the reason is capture the idea, put it down onto paper, and make your assumptions clearer for everyone to see, including yourself, so that then you can evaluate your model. And the most important parts of the business model aren't necessarily, most people start at the upper left and then continue on down. It's like a website, right? You might have seen some research about when somebody looks at a website, where do their eyes go, okay? And the typical research, I think, says you start at the upper left, and then you read across, and then you come back, you read down a little, and then across again, not as far as the beginning, and then down a little more and across. So it looks like the capital letter F, okay? So down, across, across, and across. That's because we're used to reading in that way, right? We start upper left, read left to right, and then we go down to the next line and read across. But that's not suitable for everything. For the business model, for example, if you start explaining to me from key partners and key activities, and you've taken my class, I say you didn't listen very carefully, because these are not the most important parts of the business model. The two most important parts of the business model are here in the center and here on the right. The customers, who are they? How many are they? What are they trying to accomplish? And what are the problems that they're experiencing? And then your value proposition is, how are you going to solve these customers' problems? What are you going to do for them? What does your product, what kind of value does it give to the potential customers? And the relationship between value propositions and the customer segment, we want you to reach what's called product market fit. Product is what you're trying to build. Market is your customers and what do they want. And if these fit well together, then you have a potentially successful idea. But if these miss each other, if the solution and what the customer wants don't meet, then you have a big problem. Don't continue. So you're building something which the customer, the market doesn't want. You may be able to change your model into something that works. For example, this customer wants this, the product doesn't meet it. What if you develop a different kind of product which meets the needs, at least partially? Or this is your product. What if you find another customer which needs what you're trying to provide to them? Those might be some ways to succeed in your business idea. But again, go through these, your customer segments, your value proposition, what is your product doing for them? Where are you going to advertise? Where are you going to sell the product? Is it in a store? Is it online? Is it door to door? Those are your channels. Customer relationships, are you selling the identical products to everyone? Standardization. Or more commonly, there's different customer groups, customer segments. Are you customizing your product? Are you differentiating the product that you sell to them? Which may be expensive, but satisfies the customers at a higher level. Customer relationships sometimes is also called, how do you get new customers? How do you keep your customers? And how do you grow your customers to make more money from them? And two terms important related to customer relationships is customer acquisition cost, CAC for short. How much does it cost you to get one new customer? Okay. And LTV, lifetime value, customer lifetime value. How much money are you going to make from that customer? And typically we want the lifetime value, LTV, to be higher than customer acquisition cost in order to be able to make money from this. And especially if your product is something like a SaaS product, software as a service, right? We want this to be at least 2.5 to 3 times or more to cover the other expenses that you may have as well, okay? So that's about customer relationships. Revenue streams, how do you make money from this? You might say, oh, that's simple. I sell each one for 100, and if I sell 1,000 of these, I have 100,000 in revenue. Well, sales is kind of old way of making money. Today, there's many other ways to make money from businesses as well. For example, do you have a smartphone? I don't see anybody's faces other than Gökberk Hoca and Pelin Hoca. So I'm assuming some of you are saying, yes, we have smartphones as computer engineers. Then I might say, do you have any games installed on your smartphones? And again, some of you might be shaking your heads, saying, yes, we have games on our phones. And then I might ask, are you paying for those? And then you might say, finally, no, I'm not paying for them. And some of you, your projects might actually be games that you're going to develop, but you're not going to get money directly from the customer for. So how do you make money from such a game? Well, oftentimes they might be freemiums where you give a basic version of the game for free, but after a certain number of levels, you might say, okay, now that you've played the game, why don't you buy the full version, the premium version of the game to continue? Or the game might have in-app purchases, right? So you start playing the game, but you come up to a certain point and then you start hitting a wall that you can't get over. And up pops a balloon saying, oh, do you want to buy the ability to walk through walls or a jetpack, something like that? So that's an in-app purchase, and you might make money from that. Or it might say, okay, you can't get through the wall, you've died, and you have to wait, 3 hours to be able to continue. Or if you want, you can buy additional lives. Or if you don't want to pay for it, what if you watch these advertisements once every 5 minutes? Okay. So then that is an advertising supported model, revenue model, where they make money from you indirectly through advertisers, which is also, for example, Google, right? Google, the search engine, doesn't charge you money for search results. But what does it do? It basically gets the money indirectly through advertisers. So one thing to remember is if you're using a product or a service and you're not paying for it, be very careful. Why? Because more likely than not, you're not the customer, you're the product. Okay? So keep that in mind. Google's real customer or customers are the advertisers, the people that want to put advertisements in front of your eyes, and your eyes are the product. They are doing a good job in search to be able to attract those eyeballs, those individuals, and they know a lot about you, so they are able to deliver eyeballs to the advertisers. That's how they make the real money, and they've become one of the most valuable companies in the world, exceeding a valuation of more than $1 trillion, about $2 trillion actually now. So revenue streams, renting or leasing or subscription-based models are very common. For example, some of you might have Netflix or Spotify, right? So Spotify, it might be an ad-supported model, or it might be a premium version of it. Or you might be subscribing to them, paying money each month. The actual money you pay each month might be relatively small, but if you stay long enough, your lifetime value is how much money do you pay each period and how long do you stay as a customer. So it's the multiplication of the two. So revenue streams, and then cost structure is how much does it cost to provide this? What are the main things that cause cost to go up? For example, if you're going to be selling something door to door as opposed to in a store, you might have, you need to know that you need to spend a lot of money on your sales force, okay? Or if you're going to do something online, you need to hire coders and you need to pay for servers and stuff like this. So you need to understand what is your cost structure and what are the important components in it. And then Finally, key partners, activities, and resources. These are the things which happen behind the scenes. Not everyone sees them, but to make a successful conclusion to the project, what are the things that you have to do, like design, like coding, like production, like sales, advertising, like collection of accounts receivable. So each business idea will have different key activities. What are yours? Key resources, what are the things you need to have to make it a successful project? For example, if you need to produce your product and it uses a very expensive machinery, okay, then that might be a key resource. And what if that machine costs $10 million? Do you have enough to be able to buy that to start your business? Well, many companies, startups especially, don't have enough resources for all the activities and all the resources. So they have key partners which help them with some of their activities and some of their resources. So, for example, somebody that has that machine in Ankara, which will allow you to use their machine or rent their machine for a short amount of time to help you produce your product, could be a key partner. Or if you're going to sell your product on in a supermarket, okay, to get onto the shelves, is it easy to do this? No, it's not easy, and it's expensive. Okay, so if a national chain says, hey, your product is special, if you produce it, I'll sell it on my shelves in my supermarket, that could make them a key partner. So again, this is the business model canvas, and it helps you capture that idea, put it down onto paper without skipping any important parts. This is the Turkish version, which I have translated, of the Canvas business model. You can find it at adiloran.com, by the way. And again, the 9 parts of the business model canvas. If you want more details about this, you can go on to YouTube, and I have a bunch of videos where I explain it for much longer periods of time, but I don't have enough time today. So let me skip ahead a little bit. I'm taking a little more than I wanted to anyways. But these are some examples of innovations which these companies have made in the business model over time. So innovation doesn't only happen here in the products. Okay, you can innovate in the customers, sell to customers which normally didn't have access to it, or you can sell, take something like Amazon, which was being sold in a store, and take it online, or you can change a bunch of things, the customer relationship, and maybe at the end, if you have some questions, we might come back to this. But I want you to remember that just because you have a business idea that looks good in the business model canvas doesn't mean it's the end of it, doesn't mean success. If it looks bad in the business model canvas, go back, make changes, try to fix it until you find something that has a chance of success, that product market fit we were talking about. But if the business model looks like, yes, this could work, you're not done, because your business model, your business idea probably still has a lot of weak points. How are you going to find those weak points? Well, first, let's talk about first contact and some interesting people that have said different things about first contact. Here, I want the Steve Blank's version of first contact. So Steve Blank is an entrepreneur and now an entrepreneurship teacher of in Berkeley and a bunch of other places. And what he says about first contact is no business plan survives first contact with customers. No matter how good your idea looks in its original version, oftentimes when you meet the actual customer, when you try to sell to them, you will find out that there's a lot of weaknesses in your idea. The same thing said by Mike Tyson. Anybody remember who he is? The former heavyweight champion of the world, boxing. This is what a day at the office looks like. And Mike Tyson said this: everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And then they forget who they are. They forget what they wanted to do. Like this guy, probably had a plan. He was happy when he found out he was going to have a chance to box Mike Tyson, because potentially he might be able to beat him. But his plan might have been, tire him out, wait, stay away from him until he gets tired, and then you might have a chance. But this is what happened to him. And this is potentially what can happen to you and your business idea when you meet your customers. So don't wait until everything is finished to contact your customers. You need to get in touch with them very early and very often to fine-tune your business model, or sometimes make big changes to your business model. In entrepreneurship, we call these changes, big changes, we call them pivots. And sometimes you may also have small changes, which are fine-tuning. An example of fine-tuning, let's say that game that you were going to develop. Remember, for smartphones, well, should I charge 49 kurush or 59 or 99 kurush? Might be fine-tuning your business idea. But whether you make it a paid app or whether you make it a in-app purchase version or a freemium would be very different. You need to design the game differently. You need to advertise it differently. So a lot of things change in the pivot, okay? So let me show you some examples of very smart individuals whose original ideas weren't that successful, okay? Does anybody know who these people are? These are individuals from the first ever Yeni Fikirler, Yeni İşler contest in 2005. And the winners are actually the ones that are sitting down. They didn't become successful. The ones that actually came in second are the ones standing up, okay? They are Kaan and Demirhan, okay? And they had, the name of their group was called Kade, okay? And their idea was to build a system which tracked the ball and was able to record the games automatically without having somebody operate the camera, okay? And they did actually sell this to one halı saha, and unfortunately never again. Why? Because apparently people didn't want to pay for something like this. But with the technology, they were very smart. They were either electrical engineers or computer engineers. I forget. And they did this, and they came in second at that initial contest, but they weren't able to continue with this idea. But what they did was the know-how that they developed allowed them to pivot to other ideas. And even though later now, today, some automatic tracking is used in some leagues, but it doesn't work very well. So at this game, they were basically, the camera was thinking that the side hakem's head was the ball and was focusing on him rather than the game. So I joked with them saying, maybe you might want to try your software again. But they ended up making into this company, V-Count, okay, which is one of the most successful companies today in ODTÜ Teknokent. And the founders, co-founders, Kaan and Demirhan. And Demirhan actually right now is in South America, going around to their representatives, trying to find new customers for their company. And this basically is a camera which can count the number of cars down the street, or how many customers enter the store, where they go in the store, and this has become pretty successful. Another company which they later started, which might be better known by individuals, is Onedio. So Kaan that we're talking about is actually Kaan Kayabalı and Demirhan Büyüközcü. Demirözcü, I forget his last name, but they're very bright individuals, very good entrepreneurs, but their initial idea that they pivoted from was software to follow the soccer ball, the football in games, and automatically record these games, Okay, so not all initial ideas are good. Here's another one, YouTube. Do you know what the original idea behind YouTube was before they pivoted? It was an online dating site. And it opened up and failed almost immediately. Nobody was interested at that time. But something they did on the side, okay? So rather than just look at pictures, you could upload a short video of yourself onto the site. And this software in 2005 was very interesting because at that time, there was no other way to share videos with other people on the internet because they were big, they were huge, they were slow. And what they did to help you do this, that became successful. And after pivoting to the idea of just sharing videos with other people online, a year and a half later, they sold the company in 2006 for about, I think, $1.65 billion that they sold the company for. So yeah, it can become successful, but sometimes you need to make changes. So in 2006, Google purchased YouTube for $1.65 billion with a new idea. That's the original. So I promised that I would also give you some tools to help you evaluate your business ideas without having to come out with the final version of whatever you want to do. So the MVP I was talking about is a minimum viable product, okay? And description of this is a tool to help you generate the greatest amount of validated learning. This is a fancy way of saying information about your business idea, generate information about your business idea in the simplest, quickest, and cheapest way possible. So an MVP is anything which helps you generate information about your idea to help you evaluate, to help you decide whether this has a chance of success or not, okay? And here I say MVP or MVE because when people hear product, they immediately start thinking, oh, this is a prototype, an early version of the product. It doesn't have to be. An MVE, minimum viable experiment, can be anything that you do to help you generate information in a quick and cheap way. So it could be a prototype. It could be a video explaining what your product is going to do. It could be as simple as customer interviews that you do with potential customers to understand who they are, what they're trying to do, what their big problems are. It could be landing pages. These are very interesting, and I will give you some examples of successful landing page MVPs and a number of other things. So let's look more closely at a few examples of MVP or MVEs. Have any of you heard of Eureka? This is a company with 4 founders. Berkay unfortunately passed away. Mert, Mehmet, and Umutcan. Okay, so the company actually, Berkay and Umutcan actually met in one of my classes, and they were at that time, I guess, 4th-year students in mechanical engineering and in industrial engineering. Mert, I believe, is an electrical engineer, and Mehmet is also industrial engineer. And they came together, but their first idea was not what they ended up being successful with. As a student, they even had other ideas. I'm not going to go into the details, but at least they had 3 ideas. And they had Drink It, which was a smart cup, recognizes the liquid that you put into it and keeps track of how much you've been drinking, how much water, how much caffeine, how many calories, and so on. Multiply, which is a smart counter connected to the internet, to social media, keeping track of how many attendants you have in your store, in your location. And Eureka, the one that has become successful, is a smart city application. So let's look at these and the MVPs that they used to evaluate them. So the smart cup, the Drink It cup, had a web page that they constructed, And on this web page, first of all, they didn't actually produce these cups. They had early versions, prototypes of them. This actually is a computer drawing. So this is just a 3D rendering of what it might have looked like. But this is a web page. So when you go there, you see the cup, you find out about how it works. What does it do? How does it connect to your phone? How does it keep track of how much water, how much coffee, how much cola, how much wine you have had? And then it keeps track of this, and it tells you in the past how much you've been having of this and keeps track of all of this. And it warns you when you need to drink more water and so on. What is your targets? And it basically is a tool to help you keep track of all of this. And so it is charged via USB. It explains all of these. And then finally, it says, if you're interested in this, please give us your phone, your email or your phone number so that we can contact you with additional details. So this web page that you have, it keeps track of how many visitors came to it. It keeps track of where they came from. And if you used advertising, maybe, let's say you sent emails out to 1,000 people about your smart cup. Can you keep track of which of those 1,000 emails you sent this out to, which ones came back and visited the website? Well, at a minimum, you have a counter probably embedded in your website. So you know how many people came, what time they came, what their IP addresses were, right? So at a minimum, if you're not stupid, you have that information. But if you were smart, when sending out the emails, you probably embedded a little bit of code which differentiates between the different email addresses. So you may also know which of those email addresses actually came and visited your website because there were differences in the links that you sent out. Okay, so you can also keep track of that. What else could you do? How far down the page did they read? What if they came down to the bottom but didn't fill out their email? Can you keep track of how much time they spent on the website, how far down they came? Yes, all of this is easily trackable with software, right? I shouldn't have to tell software engineers about what they can do with some simple code. They didn't continue with this idea because a competitor of theirs got an investment. Vessel was an alternative from Silicon Valley, and they got an investment. And I'm not sure if even this became a successful product. Okay, but they said, okay, we're not going to continue with this. Next, they tried Multiply, and Multiply, we said, was a smart counter. And this is a little video showing you at the time on Facebook, on Foursquare, you could check into places. So with this, you checked in, and this was on the wall of your restaurant or of your cafe. And notice what it's going to do, or it did it. It, with a noise, it actually goes, and when people see this and they see the logo, they say, hey, let me check in and let me show you what happens. So more people would check in if they saw this on the wall of your restaurant, was the idea. Why do you want people to be checking in on Foursquare or Facebook? Excuse me. Well, if you can get them to check in, you may be able to keep track of who are my customers. And if you want to send advertisements to them, you can use this information to contact them for discounts, for coupons, for advertisements. So reaching your customers and the database that is formed can be very valuable. And how did they try to sell this? Well, they developed actual physical versions of this. So they made, I don't know, at least 5 of these machines. And they, again, built a website, a landing page, right? So on this landing page, you come in, you read about it, and you, as you scroll down, more and more information. And this is what it does. This is how you plug it in. This is how you connect it to the Wi-Fi, and it automatically starts keeping track of them. There's a physical version. There's another version, which is basically a screen and a computer. And this is how much they cost. And at the end, let us contact you, or give us your email, give us your phone number to let us provide you with information, with updates about our product. And they actually sold at least 3 or 5 of these. And they actually claimed that even they sold 2 of these to Facebook. But at the end of the day, they decided that the market wasn't going to be big enough or profitable enough to continue with this. So they also killed off this idea. Maybe they might return to it later on. But their third idea was about smart cities. What do? Well, basically, they put sensors into garbage cans or recycling cans. So this allows them to keep track of how full those garbage cans are. So this garbage can is actually between our building at İşletme and the Teknokent. So on that road, this is the Koske building in the background, and Berkay and his famous Starbucks coffee. And notice this is a prototype of their sensors. It uses a relatively cheap box that you can buy from Ulus, and into it they put their sensor, and they kind of, I guess, fixed it to the top. And notice here, they had used some double-side tape initially and put it on the side, but it didn't work very well, so they changed its location. And basically, this is what they planned on their sensor box looking like, but then they decided initially they would use these boxes to test the idea. Why? Well, this one they could buy for about 15 lira per box at Ulus, Rüzgarlı Sokak, if you have to go find them. But these would have to be made, would have to be built. And to be able to build these, you have to have a mold made. Kalıp yaptırmanız gerekiyor. And a mold costs about $10,000 for the mold to be made. Okay? And if you're not sure if there's going to be any customers, you shouldn't spend $10,000 unless you know there's a customer. So for the initial versions, this was more than enough. Okay, so they used this in their prototype. They were actually trying to measure, does the sensor work? How long does the battery last? And stuff like this. But then how come they have these? Did they go ahead and then pay $10,000 plus the cost after paying for the mold was going to be less than 15 lira. But initially, they didn't want the fixed cost. So what did they do? Well, for about 300 or 400 lira, they were able to 3D print these out of plastic. And then with a little paint and with some scrubbing, they were able to make it look like a metal box. Okay, so when they went to their customers, they had something to show them, something fancy to show them. But until they were certain about the demand, they didn't spend the money to make the mold. Okay, and at the end of the day, they didn't actually use this design. They changed some things, and so it's a good thing that they hadn't spent the $10,000 to have the mold made, because changes were applied. And the way that Evreka makes money is keeping track of how full the garbage cans are. Then remember, they're industrial engineers mostly, so they optimize the route that the garbage collectors are going to be taking. And if some of these are not full, they say today you don't have to go to this one and this one. So they cut down on the time and the energy that has to be spent on the fuel that has to be spent, and that's where they make their money from. Okay, so that was the idea that eventually made them successful. They have hundreds of customers from inside of Turkey today, and also more than half their customers now are coming from international customers. So they've opened up to the world and have become quite a successful company. Other examples of MVPs, like you may be using Dropbox to keep copies of what you're doing, especially if you're working on more than one computer at work, at school, and so on, and you have to keep on carrying things back and forth. That used to be quite difficult. So at one time, Dropbox and the founder of Dropbox, Drew Houston, had this idea of building something for backups that is so easy that it works like magic, okay? But his investors were not convinced because there were competitors, some which had been doing this for longer. So, for example, there was one company, Mozy, which had been trying to do this for 3 years. And then other companies which had much more investment. So a company called Carbonite had actually raised $48 million to basically back up onto the cloud these things. But Dropbox's idea was a little different in that they were going to make things much easier and integrated across different computers and different software, operating systems. Everything was going to work like magic. Okay, that was their idea. But they couldn't get investors to agree. So what they did was they made a video of what the software was going to be like when finished. And then they put this video online. And at the end of the video, it was a fun video with some jokes and other things. At the end of the video, it said, we're now in private beta, so we're not open to the public yet. But if you're interested in this, you can go to getdropbox.com and sign up for our service so that when we launch, you can be among the first to use it. And in one weekend, the number of people on their wait list went from 5,000 to 75,000 in just a weekend. So the next time they went to their investors and they told the story, and then the investor said, well, then good idea, but no, people wouldn't pay extra for this. They said, oh, really? Here's our waiting list, 75,000 people. And then the investor said, let me take a look at that. And then said, let me reconsider. And then they invested in the idea. So their MVP was basically to prove that there were people interested in this idea if it could be made that simple. Okay. And now Dropbox is a unicorn, a several billion-dollar company. But initially, they had to prove it. And the MVP, video MVP, helped them prove it. Other examples of landing pages, and I'm kind of winding it down. I'm going to try and finish up in a little while. One example is a company called Buffer. And initially, this was just an idea. There was 0 lines of code written. Okay. And what was the idea? Now it's going to sound obvious, but at that time, it was, if you want to have a social media presence, especially as a company, one of the things that you need to do is make sure that you share tweets or Instagram posts or whatever at regular intervals, especially at the times when your audience is most likely to be there. So Buffer, the idea at the time, was to help you do this. So their landing page was basically a few very simple pages. On the first page, it said, tweet more consistently with Buffer, choose the times that you want to tweet, up to 3 times, 5 times a day at different times. Then add tweets that you want to send out to your queue, to your buffer, they call it. And then Buffer does the rest. So you tell Buffer, tweet at these times, and these are my queue of the next tweets I want you to share. And then Buffer automatically, even if your computer isn't open, it sends these out automatically for you. Today, Twitter has something called TweetDeck, which it purchased, which does all of this automatically for you. But at that time, there was no software that helped you out with this. Okay, so this was one of the first kind of tools to help out for social media. But they weren't sure whether there was going to be sufficient demand for this. Okay, so they built this website. And again, remember, the software isn't ready yet, but they prepared this, and then they sent out emails to potential customers, and then waited to see, would any of those customers come and check this out? Would they read through this? And most importantly, would they click on this, plans and pricing? When you clicked on plans and pricing, what happens? This opens up saying, hello, you caught us before we're ready. We're sorry, we're not ready yet. But if you're interested, give us your email and we will let you know as soon as we're ready. So if you don't have the software ready, why would you do this? Why would you disappoint your potential customers like this? Any ideas? Remember what the MVP is for? To help you generate information about different parts of your business idea. This one helps you test, is anyone interested? For example, if you sent the email out to 10,000 people and 0 potential people clicked on this website, what would that tell you? No one's interested. Okay. Well, what if out of those 10,000 people, what if 1,000 people came here? What would that tell you? Some people are interested. Bura, do you have any comments? I see your microphone became open. If you have comments, I'd be happy to get them. It shows me somebody's alive, other than your teachers. Okay, I'll go on. What information does it give you? Well, out of 10,000 people, 1,000, 10% seem to be interested. Out of, again, do you know which 1,000 those were? Well, yeah, because with a counter, with their cookies, you know what their IP addresses were. And if you used some smart software to send those emails, you might even know which emails were the ones that clicked and came to your websites. And how long did they stay here? Did they click on this? Did they go to the second page? Did they sign up or simply look at it and say, okay, I'll continue? All of those provides you some feedback about, is there interest? How much interest is there? The ones that came, who were they? Where were they from? Which companies were they from? And so on. Okay, so all of that is valuable information. And actually, with one extra page in between, you can develop even more information. So then they did this. When you click on plans and pricing, this page opens up. So this is the revenue model. If you want the free version of Buffer, you can send out 1 tweet per day, and you can have up to 5 tweets in the queue. So this helps you for the next 5 days for free. If you are willing to pay $5 a month, then you can send out 10 tweets per day, and you can put 50 tweets into your queue. Again, enough for 5 days. If you pay $20 a month, unlimited tweets per day, unlimited queue. Okay, so you wait and see which one of these does the customer click on. When they click on it, again, the same page opens up. Oh, sorry, we're not ready yet. But they have just produced information about which of these versions, what percentage are interested in the free version, what percent might pay $5, what percent might pay $20, and who are they, right? Because again, you collect their emails and you have their IP addresses and so on. So this, how long would this take and how much would it cost to build something like this? You guys are computer engineers, so I'm hoping, in half an hour or an hour, I can build this. If I have a website address already, I'll upload it. And then maybe I have some friends with spam lists, which might help me send out emails. Okay, or I have a crawler which goes to websites and grabs the emails from them. Don't do this; it's illegal. Many people do. So you might be able to do this in less than 1 day for very cheap to see if there's any interest in your idea. Okay, so again, it is an MVP. I'll skip this one. This is the last one I will talk about. Has anyone heard of the company Rent the Runway? The only one that I could hear from is Bura, whose microphone still is open, but no sound coming. But at least I know he's alive, okay? Or somebody using his username. Oh, he shut it down, okay. So Bura died. Rent the Runway, okay? This is a company which, with two founders, whose idea it was to basically take these dresses and rather than sell them, rent them for about 10% of the selling price. Okay, so these are dresses which are from that season, from the runways, the fashion people of that year. And these are brand names like maybe Dior or Chanel and stuff like that. So they're fancy. So I'm guessing looking at the names, we're mostly men. Okay, so we might not understand this very well. If you ask a man, okay, let's say you have to go to a wedding next weekend. Do you have anything to wear? The men will say, yeah, I have a suit and tie, so no problem. I might have to get a new tie maybe. If you ask the same question to women, they're going to say, oh no, what am I going to do? Because especially if the outfits they have, they might be from last year, or they might be that they've worn it before. If they're going to see the same people, that's a problem. For guys, for men, hey, I can wear the same suit 100 times, nobody notices. But for women, unfortunately, it's not the same story. And even worse, the dresses are not cheap. They can cost quite a bit of money, especially if they're brand names. Okay? So this is the problem that they wanted to help solve. And they were two women founders, and one was a Harvard master's student. The other was from another university. And they said, our potential customers, our customer segment is, 25 to 35-year-old women, could be university or could be early in their careers, okay? And they wanted to, again, rent these, but not in physical stores. They wanted to rent these online. So they went to designers and they asked them, can we buy dresses from you from this latest year's runways, okay, which have been out there? And they found, yes, they would let them buy in large numbers. So that was successful. They probably also got some discounts. So how much cheaper than retail could they buy these from? They had information about that. And then they had what are called trunk shows. So even though their idea was to sell this, rent these, online or through a smartphone app, they said, let's try it in a physical store. So close to the university, they rented for 1 day a store. And then they brought in the clothes that they had purchased from the fashion designers. And they invited 125 of their friends from school, which were in their potential customer segment. So they said, here's the clothes, and here is the prices, and you can rent them for, I guess, 1 week at 10% of the selling price, of the retail price of the clothes. And then they said, do you want to rent? And of the 125 people that attended, about 1/3 of them, so about 35% of them, said, yes, at those prices, we will rent, okay? And they also found out about which designers, which colors, which sizes most people wanted. So they also generated information about that. And with that information, that about 35% wanted to rent, that was great news. So they said, okay, it's going well. But again, this is the actual location. People can come, they can touch the clothes, they can try it on, and they can pick it up from that location. It's not the same thing as doing this online or doing this on a smartphone. So they tried a second version, a second MVP. In this one, again, for one day, they rented another store. And again, they invited another 125 students from their potential customer segment. But this time, they had also gotten more of the clothing from the designers that were successful and the colors and the sizes from before. So they said, here are the dresses, but you cannot try them on and you can't physically touch them. Okay, so you can see them, you see the prices, you see the sizes, but you are not able to try on the dresses. Do you still want to rent? So before it was about 35% that had said, yes, we want to rent. What percentage do you think rented under these new conditions where they can't try on the dresses? Well, interestingly, because they also had optimized for the colors, for the sizes, for the styles, more than 50% this time said, yes, even without trying it on, because this is the US, right? And in the US, sizes are pretty standardized. A size 2 or 4 or whatever, small, extra small, whatever, it's pretty consistent. So because they were also able to trust that, more than 50% said, yes, I want to rent. Again, excellent news for the idea. Then they said, let's try a third MVP, which was more realistic. Again, they got the dresses, they took pictures of all of the dresses, they pasted the pictures into a PDF, they put the information about the sizes, about the prices onto a PDF, which they then emailed to people that had signed up for their email list. And then they waited to see what percentage would say, yes, I want to rent this one at this price. Okay? And what do you think? What percentage said, yes, I want to rent? It was initially about 30%, then went up to about 50%. This time, do you think it's going to go up or down? Down, right? Yes, it did go down. It actually was about 5%. So significantly down from the 30, 50% and so on. But you know what? In their business model, 5% was more than enough to make it profitable. Okay? So this allowed them to prove that their idea had a chance of success, that it could be a profitable business. And with all of this information, they went out to investors, they got money, and they started this business. And as far as I know, it's still a successful, thriving business. And there's many people that are copying them around the world, including in Turkey. Okay, secondhand or renting is being done. And they send the clothing in these, not box, but containers. And they send it to you via cargo. And then you put it back after wearing it and you send it back to them. They don't want you to dry clean it because they want it to be done properly themselves and they get a special price. And they know that some of these are going to be torn. Some of these are going to be lost. Some of them are going to be unusable. So all of those are part of the business model as well and need to be tested. But at least are people willing to rent dresses for about 10% of the selling price online or on an app? They were able to pretty convincingly say, yeah, at least 5% seem to be willing. And that also helped them understand who their potential customers are. And they fine-tuned their segments. So this, I think, is one of the best MVPs that I have heard of to this day. Okay, so final lesson that I want you to be left with is you can do things very similar to this for your ideas. First thing to do, learn about the business model canvas and take your idea that you've been working on for a while, fill out the business model. So that makes your assumptions, because the things that you write there are actually assumptions about your customers, about your product, about your cost, about where you're going to sell this, about, you know, all sorts of things. Put it down onto paper, then find ways to test your business ideas with your potential customers, find out what your competition is doing, find out about the cost of production, find out about the pricing, and try to find ways to test your idea before finalizing it. Okay, and if necessary, make changes to your ugly ideas to make them into nice ideas, beautiful ideas. Okay. Here's some resources available. I'll try and send a copy of my presentation, or I think you can find this on SlideShare if you look under Adil Oran as well. So I'll send it to your professors as well in PDF form. So if you have more questions, I might be willing to answer. Let's say Ozan, turns out they also offer subscription-based service now. Just yes. So they say if you want to pay this much, you can rent up to 6 dresses every year or something like that. So different pricing mechanism can also work. Yes. So there were a few people that were awake. Okay. So thank you to Batuhan. Thank you to Tara. Tara, sorry, whichever one. Shukru, Ozan. You were alive. Good. Okay. Questions, comments?
From our side, thank you very much for a very, very nice seminar.
Thank you so much, Adil Hocam. I'll watch this video myself again. Actually, there's a lot to learn from.
Okay, well, I hope it wasn't too long, so I couldn't fit it into an hour, but I didn't go out 2 hours. So yes, and Gökberk Hocam, if you later you send me the video, I might upload this. I think the previous one can be found on YouTube as well. I think I uploaded that as well. And maybe I'll upload this one as well.
Yes,
it was nice to see you.